All right. All right. Thanks. I'd like to call the April 22nd, 2019 meeting of the New Canaan Board of Education to order. First up is to approve the April 1st, 2019 minutes. Do I have a motion on the minutes? Deanna? Second? Julie? All those in favor? Abstentions? Thanks. Next is to review and approve tonight's agenda. Can I have a motion? Trina? Second, Sherry. All those in favor? Thanks.
Sorry.
Yes, Penny.
It's just, if you go back to the call to order, Tom Cronin he wasn't here and then not here, then here.
Did we not have a time?
Oh, I see, okay.
That was for the
Okay,
minutes.
thanks,
Right?
okay, sorry.
Yep. Okay, next is comments from the public. To ensure the public's right to be heard, the board has set aside time during the meeting for public comments. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to each subject. Would anyone like to speak? Yes. Just state your name, please.
Thank you. Okay. Hello there. My name is Megan Steele. I live with my husband and 2 girls at 63 Bickford Lane. I hope you all had a great break. I know we did. I have stood before you all several times, 2 different chair of boards, and new members. And we have spoken, I and several friends have spoken numerous times about the medical research and science behind why teens need more sleep. I've related my own personal experiences with my own middle school daughters. As well, I have shared stories of others who experience the daily negative consequences of sleep deprivation in their children. I don't want to revisit those topics specifically. Rather, I'd love to know where each of you are in your decision-making process and where you are on the timeline. It would be great to know what each of you is thinking. I've been involved with this effort for almost 18 months, and the pace, honestly, has been practically glacial. My husband and I and friends fear that by the time the board completes its research and analysis and comes to a final decision, our children will no longer be within the school system. Would love to see some progress towards a final decision by June 2019, while there is still time to act, rather than delay yet another school year. Thank you for your time, your consideration, and your commitment to our children. Greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is John Conadaris, and I am a 7th grader at Sachs Middle School. I am here to ask Dr. Lutzy if all of you on the Board of Education to please support a later start time for the middle schoolers and high schoolers. I'm a morning person. I like the mornings. Even on the weekends, I don't sleep very late. I used to think it was easy to wake up, get ready for school, eat breakfast, and get out the door. But this year, all of that changed. I moved from an 8:20 a.m. start time to a 7:30 a.m. start time. I often have a very hard time waking up at 6:20, and I barely have time to get ready for school and never eat breakfast anymore. It's just too hard and too early to even think about eating. During first period, I'm usually very tired and often see kids sleeping at their desks. I might have fallen victim to that once or twice. I've spoken to many classmates who wish that school would start later so they could get more sleep. I understand the concern regarding town athletics. I fall into this category because I partake in many of these athletic programs. But none of my practices or games have ever started before 5 p.m. I believe that if school ended later, it wouldn't have a huge impact on my sports schedule, but starting school later will have a huge impact on how much sleep we get, especially over time. I believe that I speak for a very wide amount of kids at Sachs and the high school. Please help us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Christiana Majora Barado. I live at 312 Silver Mine Road, I have 2 children currently at East and Saks, and I'm simply here to show my support of later start times and ask the board to make every effort possible to make a decision sooner rather than later, and of course, make a decision in the best interest of the kids' health in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Next up is reports and recognition. First on the list is the New Canaan High School graduation requirements update with Mr. Egan.
Sorry.
And team.
Well, thank you for having me here tonight. This has really, I guess, been a long-anticipated update since I think the initial startings of this law really started changing. I think it was like 2006. It's finally going through now, and the class of 2023 will be the first group going through. So I want to thank you guys for having me here, but it's been a long time and for the changes to come. Before we get started, I want to thank a group of people who really were instrumental in kind of taking a look at our requirements and seeing how we can modify them to meet the state's law. First, Mr. Rothman and Mrs. Carrero really kind of spearheaded this ship, and I joked with them before that while I'll be presenting, they'll be answering all the questions. And also here we have Mike Staffaroni, Paul Reed, Kate Marhefke, and Donna Sapienza in the back. Cindy Rivera is here as well. So in addition to the people who are missing from there, I want to thank them for coming out tonight. It's never easy to give up a night to come out to a board meeting as awesome as they are. I want to thank them for coming. So first, the law has changed. The law is now in place for the graduating class of 2023. It now includes 9 credits in the humanities, 9 credits in STEM, 1 credit in physical education and wellness, 1 credit in health and safety education, 1 credit in world languages, and 1 credit in a mastery-based diploma assessment. Before we kind of go into that, I want to talk about what we currently have, just to refresh your memories. The credits currently needed for the class of 2022 and prior. There are 4 credits in English, 3 credits in social studies, 3 in math, 2 in science, 0.5 in health, 1.5 in PE. The visual performing arts and career and tech ed is 1 credit. Fine arts, I answered all that, and a total of 23 credits for us here at the high school. So now we're expanding to 25. Here you have a sample academic roadmap that we got from guidance. Basically, this is a course layout that could be for a student today. You'll see on the far right what the actual requirements are. So many of our students, or most of our students, do take 4 years of science, but we currently only require 2 credits for science for graduation. And I'm not going to read the whole thing here. That's just one sample of one of the changes that you'll see as we move forward. We also have graduation standards they have to meet in each of the following areas: reading, writing, research, mathematical problem solving, scientific literacy, and citizenship. And there are certain things they have to do to meet those standards. Those will not be changing with the new law, but certainly they're standards that we have in addition to our credits that we need for graduation. Basically, in meeting the cumulative and credits of the law, the group emphasized the importance of a diploma representing a comprehensive program of study, drawn from a variety of learning experiences and disciplines. So they wanted to make sure that all disciplines were covered and assured that they gave our kids the best opportunities to meet the law and make them ready for college and beyond. So, beginning with the class of 2023, it's 25 credits, 9 in the humanities, I said this earlier, 9 in STEM, 1 in PE and wellness, 1 in health and safety education, 1 in the world languages, and a mastery-based diploma assessment. So how is that broken down for us? So we're going to have 4 credits in English, 4 in social studies, 3 in social studies, 0.5 in the visual performing arts, 1.5 in any combination of the above 3 areas, or world languages beyond the first year, graphics, business ed, and family and consumer science. For STEM, it's also 9 credits, 3 in math, free in science. It's an additional year. The group felt very strongly about that we are at college, our students are mostly going to college, and most of our kids take 4 years of science. So wanted to increase that requirement to 3 years of science. 0.5 in career and tech ed, and 2.5 in any combination of the course, including 5 semesters in any of the above disciplines or tech ed-based VPA areas such as digital photography or music tech. Again, 1 credit in world language is now required, 1 in PE and health, and 1 in PE and wellness, health, and safety education. And we kind of broke it out there of what it would be, our health courses throughout the years. 1 mastery-based diploma assessment, and 1 additional semester in either career in tech ed or visual and performing arts. 2.5 extra credits there as well, totaling 25. The mastery-based diploma assessment, that's still work that we're going to be deciding on. It's a work product developed by students over a period of several years and integrates many, if not all, of the essential skills required over a student's history in secondary schools. Basically, there's going to be a committee getting together on the vision of the graduate. It's going to be a K-12 committee. And that group will help drive what that mastery-based diploma assessment will look like. This is kind of the new roadmap of what it's going to look like. Our counselors put this together, and basically they're just going to do the same thing, outline the courses for each of the individual students, but now they're kind of plotting them out for humanities, for STEM, and there's the rest of it. I don't need to read it all to you. Totaling 25 credits. In addition to that, you're probably saying, how do our students currently meet the new law? So if you take a look at how we've kind of broke it down for you to see how our students currently meet the new law, English, 100% of our students in the last 2 graduating classes meet it. Social studies, 100% of our students in the last 2 classes meet it. Fine arts, again, I don't need to read the whole thing to you. But basically all of our students meet the new law in both the humanities and in STEM. World languages, again, a high amount of our students currently meet the new law. PE, 100% of our students. The mastery-based diploma is new. And again, the additional credits, we currently meet that. Now, 25 credits is what's needed. 77% of our students currently meet that. But 98% of our students have 24 credits. Within that, there's a mastery-based diploma assessment that's going to be added on. That'll get those kids to 25 credits. And really, we could take a look at the senior year and see what that looks like for kids as well. But certainly, there's additional credits can be made up there as well. Any questions for you guys, for these guys? Deanna?
So could you just give us a little bit more background on the mastery-based diploma assessment? Like, what do you envision those kind of projects being? Just because it's new and I don't really.
Certainly the work of the vision of the graduate will do that. This group has kind of met and said there are things that are currently being done in the high school that maybe we'd apply to that. But again, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves as well. I want the committee with the vision of the graduate really kind of directing us in that way. Want to share more with that?
I mean, if we
Sure.
could just get like maybe the discussion that you've had around what types of
Right.
projects, what do you envision?
One of the things that we've talked about in looking at schools across the state, not just schools we compare ourselves to, but everybody's having to meet this. There are standalone courses that are sort of capstone projects. We really were not in favor of that because not only would it add an additional course, it really would be more self-contained than what we had envisioned as some type of cumulative portfolio that the student curates over 4 years, drawn from ideally, and again, this is sort of a working model, something that is embedded or pieces that are embedded across curricula. And thinking in terms of what types of things would we want our diploma to represent? What types of experiences, in addition to the classes and the distribution of credits, we would want for our students by the time they graduate. So we've had a very general idea of a portfolio-like student-curated piece But the more we thought about it, it really should reflect what we want our diploma to represent. And so that's why the discussion of visioning where we want our graduate to be, what we want each individual student to be able to have demonstrated successfully. That's why we have an idea for a package.
So kind of like what you do with the English department currently?
That's
The
one-
English,
Sorry, no, one of the things we looked at was like the different pieces they
Okay.
had, but again, I don't want to jump ahead of ourselves.
Yeah,
with
okay,
the
I just-
district.
but the idea would be pieces drawn as a start, pieces drawn from a short experience is already embedded across the curriculum. So the English portfolio might be a piece.
Okay.
And
Just-
I was just going to say, I think there's some guidance in the legislation itself as far as the purpose of that mastery-based
Right.
assessment, and that it is meant to be an opportunity for students to demonstrate their mastery cross-curricular
Right.
of the program. So remembering that this really, it applies for our incoming class of 2023. The
4
high
years.
school, I think, has 4 years out, they're thinking about what is it that we're currently doing that we can sort of use as stepping stone into this, and then what else can we or should we do in order to provide that opportunity for students to demonstrate mastery, over the program with that. There are some districts that are talking about using the student internship experience, the senior year internship, as sort of that culminating capstone type experience and having a mastery-based credit around that. There are others that are creating new courses, as you said, that are doing seminars with kids that are sort of the interdisciplinary seminars throughout the course of their senior year that culminate into a presentation or a portfolio. So there are lots of different options out there. That's something that will be integrated into the discussion around the vision of the graduate. As they're mentioning, that we're looking at putting together a K-12 committee that's going to begin kind of articulating what we want our graduates at each of the levels, so from 4th to 5th, 8th to 9th, and then, of course, at graduation. Be able to articulate the knowledge, skills, competencies, what they've learned, and how they'll demonstrate those things in order to walk across that stage at each of those different levels. So that work of that committee, and the board will be involved with that, and other community members and folks, will help to inform what that mastery-based diploma assessment looks like.
And is this, just one other question on this, is this something that is new that's delivered, or is it sort of a compilation of past work? Is it sort of
Probably
like a
hybrid.
thesis? Yeah,
It's probably
okay.
a hybrid of
All right.
that, because you really couldn't design one course that had them demonstrate competency in all courses, right?
Right.
So
Right.
the model around portfolios is a very strong model, because students can identify the work that they think best exemplifies them reaching whatever standard, and then you have them write a reflective sort of entry slip about that piece, talking about why they chose it, how they think it exemplifies that standard, meeting mastery in that different way. And then the students are really doing the work around reflecting on their own growth as learners, and they can create that and then look to do something with it, whether it's to present it to peers in a class, to submit it, to do other types of things. And the internship might become a component of that.
Right.
And maybe it's reflections around that experience that sort of become the capstone, and they think about how what they've learned is turned into real action and work in that experience.
Yep.
Something like, so it'll be, I think, down the line, we want it being some type of a hybrid.
Right.
Some new pieces to it, but they'll be reflecting on their own growth as learners throughout the system. Am I
Yeah.
capturing the conversations we had with the committee? And
Katrina?
Just one other related question. So is the vision that this is a credit, that, or just a requirement for graduation, or is it something that actually is graded as part of the GPA?
Well, it depends how we do it. If we're talking about a reflective portfolio that really demonstrates that mastery, it would be very difficult to develop a rubric that sort of grades it on a 0 through 100 scale, right? Because what we're looking for is genuine and authentic voice in their reflections and consideration of their growth. So I think that the goal wouldn't be to find another reason to grade or rank kids, right? We'd really want to see them and make it almost a celebration of their learning. I think that's part of the conversation too.
And I think some of the conversation, if I can just add in too as well, is you might be saying that, we are looking for our graduates to be innovators, communicators, problem solvers. And so how would they demonstrate that? And so there would be a variety of ways that they would be able to demonstrate that they're an effective communicator, that they're an effective problem solver. And it may be often various disciplines that they have a special interest in. So that's something that we're just exploring and having conversations with other districts to see the best path to take.
Sherry?
Oops, sorry. I'm saying Penny.
Would you like to call on Penny next?
That's my job.
I defer.
So first of all, just recognizing the extensive cross-committee work that this was to get to this point, so congratulations on this milestone. Just a couple of questions. So the first is there a reconciliation between what we need to do to meet these graduation requirements and get our students college ready? And for example, world language, there's only 1 credit required, but I've always heard that colleges are looking for 3 full years of world language in high school. So I'm wondering if there are other examples like that that we should be aware of as we're looking at the full picture of what this change means.
Sure. You've actually pointed out a very good piece of our discussion. The law provided these baskets, 9 in STEM, 9 in humanities, and then broke out some individual pieces. Very much involved in our discussion were our school counselors, particularly Cindy Rivera and Kelly Tamburino. Every time, I'm a history teacher by trade. To me, the world should be 9 credits in social studies, and that's all that matters. But then the question was, but how does this position our students, not just in terms of preparation for college, but also against whom they're competing? And so that's where we broke down those big baskets. We've always had, thanks to our counselors, we've always had not what you have to have, but what you should have. So the state has played with the world language requirement throughout different iterations of this law. It was either no requirement, a 2 credit requirement. This is where they are now, 1 credit requirement. The reason it's not an issue for our students is because there has always been, in the building of a 4-year plan with our school counselors, every kid in this day and age, regardless what he or she wants to do, should have some level with a foreign language, with a world language. So the fact is, as Bill showed, the 1 credit's not going to be an issue. For literally the dozen or so kids who have not taken at least 2 or maybe even 3 or 4 years or more of a world language, they will easily meet the 1 credit requirement. In fact, in meeting the requirement of the rest of the humanities basket, for instance, the 2nd and 3rd year of a language, which it's still going to be taken. This is not going to reduce anything. So we are exceeding what these requirements are. The 3 years in math, 3 years in science, we're recommending as a minimum. Kids have consistently taken 4 years, if not more, of each. Same thing with social studies, 3 years, kids are taking 4 or more. So that's why we have to meet and prepare our kids to meet the minimums required of the law, but our students consistently exceed them.
And I think honestly, we just want our kids to be the most competitive that they could be leaving a new kid in high school. This law doesn't change that for us. We were already that, and we're going to continue to be that.
Great. So that reconciliation really happens with the counselor and with the development of the 4-year plan.
Absolutely.
Yep. And just another question then. So to get our kids from the 23 or 24 credits to the 25, I mean, what is that going to take in terms of adding courses or sections or teachers?
We're staffed well enough to be able to do that now. When you look at the master-based diploma and honestly look at the senior year, there's plenty of opportunities for our kids to be able to get credits, the additional credit they may need. It's already 75 or 76% of them have the 25 credits, but 96 or 97% have 24. So it's not going to be a problem for our kids to get there, and we're staffed to be able to do that.
Question, and you may not have the answer to this at hand, so we can take a look at it later if we need to. I'm wondering, you do have such a high percentage, almost 98%, at the 24 credits. and then down, to 77% at the 25, still a high number. And you think about, when I think about a percentage point, it's generally about 3 kids per percentage point, so if you're at 300 or so kids. Why do you think there's that difference from 24 to 25? Is it of course availability? Is it just the number of courses they're currently expected to take each of their years? Is there something else that drives that 20-point change between 20 percentage point drop between 24 credits and 25 credits?
I think it's been as long as kids have had their core courses, and by that I mean the 5 core academic classes, and met the distribution requirements, current distribution requirements in the elective areas. I think students have, as they got into junior and senior year, either taken a lot more in certain disciplines or elective areas, or simply, said, I've got enough. So I'm only going to take 5 classes plus health and PE senior year, things like that. One of the things that we didn't break down, but when you start going above 24, you go to 24 and a half, I'm sorry, 23, 23 and a quarter, 23, 23.75 was only a few percentage points less. So there are kids who are very, very close.
Julie.
I was just going to say, and Mr. Rothman, it's kudos to you. I'm so glad that our district is keeping civics as a requirement, because I know I've heard of other districts not including that, and I didn't see that specifically was required by the state, but.
It is.
Oh, it is by the,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I missed that. I
In
just
the
saw that it
original
was-
language, it literally says humanities, including civics and the arts.
Sorry, I misread that.
No,
Okay.
no, that's fine.
I was going to let you just continue with the kudos. So.
I believe it was towards me, Mr. Regan.
You always say I'm not.
Thank you, Mrs. Reeves.
Yana.
So just 2 questions. The easy one, so you think that we are appropriately staffed in world languages and science, given that, it is 95, 90.
I do.
You think we'll be able
But
to?
we'll monitor, and we always monitor that every year,
Okay.
There are some years we come back and need less, and some years we
Okay.
need more, but we monitor.
And then I just wanted to go back, because it's new, we're all having questions, on the mastery-based assessment. So we're in late April now. We're talking about this coming in for the class of 2023, which is the incoming freshman class, and we're talking about meeting with parents and board members, so it's getting tight, and I just want to understand how we envision bringing all those parties in between now and September, or are you not worried about this particular piece coming in the fall because they have 3 years left?
That's really the biggest piece, especially if you get to a reflective part, like a portfolio or something like that. There is time to be able to do that, but the work of the division of the graduate is getting together soon.
Right, this is not going to be packaged in the fall when the freshmen come into the high school.
Okay.
It's something that's going to unfold over the course of next year.
Okay.
And then as they continue to move through school, the idea of the best way to sort of develop that mastery-based credit will be will be the outgrowth of those conversations. So it's not something, because you have those years as they move through school, it's something that's evolving, as the conversations continue. But it will not be something that's ready to go, and it doesn't have to be in September.
So when do you envision bringing in parents and the board?
We have, we've scheduled an initial conversation with staff
Okay.
in the next week, right? Yeah, in the next week. So we're going to meet with staff from across the district to discuss the idea of a vision of the graduate. And with that group, we're going to outline timelines and kind of procedures going forward. And at that point, we'll be inviting the board to join us and some community members to do the same.
Okay.
Great. Penny?
So I guess overall, how do you see this as changing the types of courses that the new Canaan High School students are taking? Generally, is it basically a non-event, just a redefinition, and they're going to be doing what they've been doing all along for the vast majority of students, or are we driving students to certain kinds of classes a little bit more?
we're looking for some more independence from kids and some choice in different areas, like particularly they're doing some stuff with health and PE, which will give them a little bit more flexibility and choice looking at. But in a lot of ways, it is a non-event. We already have, our kids are meeting 25 credits. They're well prepared for when they leave New Canaan High School. It's a law we were kind of waiting for and making changes where necessary. The master-based diploma piece is probably the biggest piece that we'll
Right.
work through.
Okay.
Can I add something about the language?
One of the things that has happened over the last couple of years anyway, in sort of keeping our curriculum contemporary and relevant, if you will, is the creation of some different courses within existing disciplines. Lizette D'Amico in the World Language Department, for instance, in looking at the fact that there's a handful of students who don't take languages, but now will have to get 1 credit in a language, has already created and has run this year a Latin grammar and culture course. You know, because it is a world language. It's comparable to an introductory classics course. There's been discussion over the years of breaking up, I don't think it's actually happened, but even possibly breaking up level 1 of a language. So that, you know, and the reason kids have not taken languages is because they needed support in other areas. And it's not a question of not fitting in their schedule, they're just not at that point. And so there have been some new classes developed already to prepare for this. But as I said in response to Sherry's question before, our kids have really been prepared all along, going beyond the bare minimum requirements of the state. So it's not going to be a significant change in a freshman or a sophomore schedule. You know, it's not going to be a significant change for the vast majority of our kids who, in taking 4 years of social studies, 4 years of English, 3 or 4 years of a language, have already far exceeded the 9. So that's how the 25 is going to, same thing goes with math and science. So it's not going to significantly change. But Bill's point's an important one. In looking at what we want kids to do, we are going to encourage kids to create different opportunities to meet some of these things as well. We have a very vibrant independent study program. Will that expand? I don't know. But that type of model already exists. There are research opportunities. There's a course already in science research. That already exists. So whether that feeds this or not, we already have a lot of ways that kids are doing things that this is not a huge adjustment for us.
Okay.
Sure.
So just a clarifying question. I remember when this came up last year or whenever it was, there was some hope that we would be able to recoup phys ed credit because we were, you know, the discussion that we have 70% of our student athletes play at least one varsity sport. Our students are very physically active, and the hope that we could save that. But I see that health increased. I mean, phys ed went down to 1. But is there any backstory to that, or is there any hope remaining that, you know, there's an exemption for that graduation requirement?
No, you need a certified physical education teacher. It's something, actually, Brian and I looked at back in 2005 when we were in Brookfield for some of our athletes then. And it's not something that anywhere happens. You need a certified physical education teacher teaching PE.
But it does give us the opportunity to develop maybe some new and high-interest courses for kids.
Correct.
You know, because it's PE and wellness. And so it does, and I think that one of the guiding philosophies of this new law is to create opportunities for schools and for students in those schools to have different pathways and different opportunities to meet the credit requirements. So in the past, it was much more prescriptive. It would say biology, U.S. history, civics, some other things. They've really loosened up on a lot of those things. And now in the PE, by saying PE and wellness, there's an opportunity to develop different high-interest courses for students to be able to have those opportunities. So maybe they may be involved in 3 sports, you know, every season, but maybe they'll opt, instead of a traditional PE course, to go more into a wellness course that's being developed, and you know, that'll expand their opportunity to learn different things.
And as Ari pointed out, we've really changed our program significantly in the last few years. When you talk about computer science, the amount of computer science we've put in, Also in robotics and some of our CTE courses, we've tried to meet the interests and needs of the kids and have that drive the program.
So just a follow-on from that, it seems like we have developed courses that sort of cross over, whether it's from, arts into, into humanities. Are we already, or technology, are we already offering courses that would hit more than one of these boxes? And are we going to, it seems like we're going to do more of that. Is that something we're already doing?
That's right. And, I can let Bill speak to it if he likes, but music tech is a good example. So it's a VPA course. The students are learning to compose music and to play that music, but it's also a STEM credit. So that's where there's that flexibility for students to put it where they need for the requirements here, and they're able to take it where maybe they would have had to opt for another required course in a narrower discipline. So by cross-listing the courses, it opens up more opportunities for the kids.
Right. Okay, great.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Any other questions? This is great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, yes.
Thanks, guys. And thank you to the high school staff that have been involved with this from the beginning. That all came out on this first night back after break. So, thank you.
Okay, next up is the solar cogen project with Dr. Keating.
Thank you and good evening. So several months ago, Brian had asked us to come up with ideas for our reports to the board. And we picked April 22nd for this report, which at the time we didn't know was Earth Day. It's kind of appropriate to have this report on today. So we're here to review with you our progress on Board Goal 5C4. I have it before you at your spots. And that deals with energy savings for the district. So last summer, when you were putting together your goals and objectives, we had previously had a goal for energy conservation, but it wasn't very specific. And through conversations with the board, we expanded that particular goal to include exploration and consideration specifically of solar, natural gas, which we happened to be involved with at the time, propane, which we were well down the road with that, fuel cells, microgrid technologies. And so very happy to inform the board that we've made great success in terms of natural gas, worked very hard with the town, great coordination with them in terms of planning and implementing natural gas conversion of 4 of our 5 schools. We still have West, and we're still not sure whether or not we're going to be bringing it up to West. It may not be cost effective. We may go to propane instead of the natural gas, but that's still on the drawing board. But aside from that, 4 of our schools are running on natural gas, which is an amazing accomplishment, and we are saving money. And then we've finished converting our large fleet of buses to propane, and that is working great. It's great for the environment. The cost savings are not quite as high as much as we had hoped for, but propane gas does fluctuate, and we could achieve savings down the road. So now our attention has been changed to solar and to what's called CHP, which is a cogen kind of a thing where it's a combined heat and power type of a plant. In our goals, we had mentioned fuel cells. Fuel cells are really one of 5 different types of cogen plants. And we've learned a lot about that over the last 7 or 8 months as the town kind of focused in on fuel cells with a microgrid that would have connected the high school, Sac South, Waveney, and the YMCA. And after careful consideration and a lot of research into that option, we realized it wasn't really right for us, that there were better options for the schools. And so we are now exploring other types of cogens. But what I'd like to do is just start briefly with the solar to let you know where we've gone with that, because we've made the most progress in that area. The first step that we wanted to do with regards to solar was to identify what type of solar projects we could accommodate on our grounds. Would it be on the roofs? Would it be on the ground itself? Or would it be on some other type of structure? So last year we made a visit to Fairfield, I forget which school in Fairfield, but Fairfield, where they had installed carports and put solar panels on top of carports with electrical outlets for electrical cars. And we thought that was an interesting concept. But in Fairfield, they had property to kind of hide it from the public. It was like in the back of the school, and so you couldn't see it. And when we looked at our grounds, we did not feel that it really would fit into the beautiful landscape of New Canaan. So then we started to look at ground space, which you have very limited ground space. And then we started to think about our roofs. We have 3 roofs that are going to be replaced over the next 3 years, all the elementaries, which are prime candidates for solar. And they're going to be 30-year roofs, and the solar will extend the life of those roofs beyond 30 years. So I think it's a great investment for the town. And then we looked at Saks. There's a few places at Saks that will work pretty well for us, and that's going to be Saks over the cafeteria. That roof right there is pitched correctly, it's strong enough to handle it, and so we're going to pursue that roof as well. The high school is a different story. The high school, the roof needs to be replaced at this school in the next 3 to 4 years. Very expensive project that will take more than 3 or 4 years. It's probably going to be in stages over a period of years. And the way the whole programs with solar work, with incentives, that really wouldn't fit into the model. You basically have to finish your projects within 3 years from the date that you acquire your funding. So we decided to move forward with applying for ZRECs. Those are called Zero Renewable Energy Credits with the state, and those are administered by Eversource. And so we put in a bid. It's a bidding process back in the fall, and we were awarded all 4 schools. And we were awarded under the medium program. There's a small program, a medium program, and a high program. We really couldn't accommodate a high program. We knew we could do more than a small, so we got the medium, which we were happy about that. And we won our bid at $95 per kilowatt, at 1,000 kilowatts. So that's up to 250,000 kilowatts, which produces about 340,000 kilowatt hours, which is what we're built for on our normal bill. The other thing that was really important through this process was that we obtain or retain the rights for net metering. Because with solar, we get a lot of energy in the summer when we have a lot of sun, but our schools aren't occupied at that time. So what we have to do is we have to meter it out into the grid, and with this meter, we're able to recapture it at no additional cost. So if we're producing energy at 6 cents per kilowatt hour, which is about a third of what we're currently spending through Eversource, we're getting it back at 6 cents per kilowatt hour. So that piece was really critical. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been financially feasible for us to go through that. And we are grandfathered in on all 4 projects for the schools for this, which is good. The key, again, and like I said, is that we do have to accomplish it within 3 years. We believe we can. This summer, we're going to do South. We hope to complete South, learn from the project, and then next summer, with that knowledge, go for East as the roof is being replaced. West, there's a portion of West on the gym roof that we can do a partial project on. It's a steel roof, and as long as we go through the proper zoning and permitting process up in that area of town, we'll do that. And then we're going to go for Saks next summer as well. So those are the projects that we have on our plate. If we are able to install full program or full systems for each school, we'll save about $23,000 a year just from the ZRECs. And we can either take those ZRECs ourselves and use that money to pay the developer, or we can actually assign them to the developer. If we assign them to the developer, we get a lower kilowatt hour. If we don't, we'll pay more, but we'll be able to use the ZREC. So that's a financial economic decision we're going to be making as we move forward. So like I said, we're going to start with South. We do hope to have that project complete by early fall. If it's not in this summer, we have a lot of coordination on that site because of the fact that we're putting on the roof. It may go into the fall. We've done a window door replacement project into the fall. We feel we can handle it. We're not concerned about it. We'd rather do it right than have problems with the implementation. I will say we are working with a structural engineer right now, and the way the 26 roofs are put together on that building, it's how we put them on the building that's going to determine how many solar panels we can get up there. But we're hopeful, because there's not a lot of mechanicals on the top of that roof, that we can fit the 250. So we'll be giving you updates on that. We're currently out to bid on that project. We're going to have a walkthrough on Wednesday. Bids are opened on May 1st. So we do plan to have a recommendation for a bid award shortly after that. And as we do this, we want to bring it to the board, because what we're getting involved with is a PPA, a power purchase agreement. And what that means is that you're not going to outlay any capital. All the capital will be absorbed by the developer and whoever finances it for them. So more to come on that, and as we go through the process, we'll keep you updated. So getting down to the cogen, this has been an interesting process. Deanna has been through several meetings with the town. They had originally decided to go with this full-blown plant that would have required a significant capital outlay from either the town or from a developer. But we would be producing a significant amount of energy at the high school to be distributed. There was limited controls on how much, so you'd have to kind of overproduce in a way, which you don't want to do because you have to pay for it. And there would have been a lot of steam billowing out of the high school. You would probably been able to see it down on the Merritt, even maybe 95. I mean, there were stacks with steam because that steam is used as the off product to heat. And the heat would be heating primarily the YMCA pool, which means it has to get there somehow. So we really thought a lot about that option, and it was costly. We really felt that the cogen would be, the other options of cogen would be much less. So given the fact that we are going to be hiring an architect engineer to come in and work with us to give the 5-year refresh on the MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and update, those systems are integrated in with the cogen. So we decided to go and interview engineers. We've settled with an engineer firm, excellent, very well qualified. Brian had an opportunity to meet them. And they're going to start with really looking at our MEP and how we can select the best possible cogen plants to work with the MEP that we have or upgrades that we might need to maximize the cogen and then go with a replacement plan on that. And they can be done under a PPA or they can also be done with a capital investment. We just need to balance those two and determine what's best for the district. But it's really exciting stuff. We've learned a lot through the process. I think that the district is going to save a lot of money. The town's going to save a lot of money after we get through with this. And the equipment does last. You know, you have certain parts that you have to replace with the cogen over time. Solar is limited. And the other thing is you do get locked into one price for the duration of the contract, which is going to be 20 years.
That's
So
great.
6 cents for electricity over 20 years is probably going to save millions of dollars.
Right, this is great. The thing that I like about this is that if you couple this with the roofs that we have to replace, you're getting the savings from energy over time, which offsets possibly even all over a 20-year life. I'm not sure if it's all, but it's a significant portion of the cost of the roof, which is great. Any questions? Benny?
So I just want to commend you all on all the work. I think this is fantastic. And the only part I want to revisit is I want to revisit the high school. I was a little disappointed. It's a huge roof to hear that we didn't think we could do, if I heard you right, that we didn't think we could do any solar or anything on this roof, but more maybe due to resources that we had rather than what might be most economically viable. So that part was a little
In its
bit.
current state, we cannot, because the current state of the roof is that it really needs to be replaced.
But I thought
But-
you were saying that when we replace it, we can't do.
Oh, we can. The thing is, we're going to have to reapply for Z-Rex for that, or apply for Z-Rex for that building. So it's too early to do that right now. The Z-Rex and the net metering is what makes these projects viable.
Yeah, economic.
So we have
they're
to
good
see
for
what's
3
available
years.
at the time.
So,
But do we have to replace this roof within, I mean, so can we apply for, when we apply to do this roof, are we going to look at doing solar on it?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
It's just
And
not
the
happening yet.
plan, I believe, is that 5 years out, we look at the high school roof. But it's a significant number, where it's over
It's
$7
a
million.
huge. Oh, yeah.
And it's, but there's spots that are failing a little that we're fixing and we're working with. But you wouldn't put solar on a roof that's at the end of its life. right?
No.
But yeah,
Okay,
when we
I
go to
misunderstood.
replace
No,
it.
you would never do that.
Right, we are certainly going to look and see what makes sense with solar.
When we go to replace the work.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good.
So
Fabulous.
it's good news at all 5 buildings.
All 5 buildings now are great news.
Well, and just to share, I was interested to learn from the engineers that, we talk about the cogen system, which is, runs on natural gas, and it's a turbine, sort of small thing. It can be small, it can be large. You can have an array of them. Sometimes they even go indoors. They can go in the boiler room and you just pipe the exhaust out like you do for a boiler, and it just goes right into the room. And our boilers themselves, some of them are getting, again, towards the end of their useful life, and they're starting to break down, looking at replacements. If you go to a system like that, you can use the heat and other pieces from
It's
that
not just
turbine.
generating energy, it's generating
The heat,
right?
and that heat can go into the boiler and then go through the building that way, so it saves you even more that way. So these things are kind of virtuous cycles that we're on around this, and we are still considering and talking about down the line, are there ways to use natural gas in other ways in the buildings? And I think, again, Dr. Keating mentioned the propane for the buses, so we look to make sure it's economically feasible, and we also look to see around the environmental impact. And all of this is really it's reducing our carbon footprint as a school district.
And just one thing, Penny, we have asked the architects and the engineers to take a look at the high school for cogen first, because we're not going to be doing the solar, actually the high school and Saks, and find out what our options are there, so that next year at budget time, we're going to have a pretty good picture of where we're going to go with that school. And getting cogen in there will really bring down those costs.
Just
Great.
one more question on the high school. Did anybody look at just doing the roof over the auxiliary gym?
We did. And that might be an option. And one of the things that we're looking at is tying that into the lighting on the fields. It's a good location to get it there, and we have the piping to go out there.
And that's
So we
a
are going to
separate
look
meter,
into
right?
that. We don't have a ZREC on that, but it may be small enough to pay for itself.
Okay. One area where it's a new roof. Or newer roof.
I just wanted to make sure I understood the timing for the solar. So this summer is south, and you'll be replacing the roof at that point, and doing the solar at that time. And then east and Saks are next summer?
Correct.
And so I know east, we definitely have to redo I can't remember on the capital plan, Saks roof being redone. That's not being
No,
redone.
the
We
east
can just
roof.
put it on. We can just put it on. So are we going to have, I always get, those are large capital projects, so I just,
So
are
they're
we-
going to be PPAs,
Okay,
so it will be paid out of our operating budget.
yeah. No, I'm not worried about the
the
cost.
roof? Okay.
I'm worried about the resources and the, getting it done in the summer.
So the east roof is on the capital plan for next year.
Right.
And then the west is on the year after that. So those have all been laid
Yeah.
out and communicated clearly.
It's more
But there's not
the-
a Saks roof on there.
But it's I thought you said you were going to do solar on the Saks roof that summer.
Yes.
Is it- So I'm
But
just saying.
the cost of that would be part of
I'm
the
not,
PPA.
I'm not worried about the
No
price.
capital.
I'm not worried about the price. I am actually asking about the resources and getting it done in the summer, because that's more my concern, that you're looking at two large projects, both Saks and East, in the same summer.
Right. So the reason we decided to just do south this year is to learn.
Okay.
We really wanted to learn. Our consultant really wanted us to do several schools this summer, and we had to kind of pull back his enthusiasm, because we want to do things right and really good. And we'll learn from this. And, like next year with East, they're going to be doing the roof replacements, completely different type of roof. So we have to kind of learn from this and then apply it to what we know is going to go on over at East. Saks, I'm not so worried about, because it's really on an existing roof.
Okay.
And it's slanted, we have no ballasting, it's pretty straightforward.
All right.
Great.
So on the Saks project for next summer, you'll just be adding the solar panels. You won't be replacing the roof over the cafeteria?
Exactly.
And that roof, it has a good 20-year life left in it?
They feel the architect, we have an architect that took a look at it, a roofing architect, and he approved that.
All right, well, kudos to that committee and the maintenance committee for Saks for all these years then. That's great.
Were you on that committee?
No, I was not on that committee.
Would you like to be on that?
Oh, I'd always be on the solar committee. I think that would be great.
Any other questions? Great, thank you very much. All right, next up is the school start times update with Dr. Lutzy.
And friends. So as we have been doing for the last couple of months, in the second meeting of the month, we've given a more detailed update about where we are with school start times and our thinking. So start with a little bit of bad news. Unfortunately, we were working on having a speaker come. We're targeting either just before break or just after the break to try to hold it an evening for community members, others that wanted to learn more, and unfortunately that fell through. The person we were looking at has a book that's just coming out next month. We thought the timing would be perfect. That person felt that the timing, unfortunately, there was too many things happening all at once, and he, not knowing kind of our timing and urgency, offered to come in the fall and to speak in the fall and do that, and we still may wind up doing that. But it's unfortunate because I think his work and he's local, the book he's written and the articles that he writes, I think would have been very appropriate for the conversation. So, as the best laid plans, as things change, we have to adjust. So we are doing that now. We've been talking about developing a few videos in-house with some folks to communicate sort of the why we're looking at this and the purpose and the science, and to try to provide enough information for people to feel confident as they're responding to the questions that we're going to share with you. So as we talk through and you have in front of you a school schedule survey from Hanover, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, but the opportunities to learn more about this, you'll see, are sort of woven into the survey itself. So if somebody is responding to it and they feel that they don't have enough information to respond, there'll be links for them to be able to click out, to watch a 3-minute video, to read an article, to learn more, or even to reach out to us to ask any specific questions. So we want to facilitate people's responses to the survey so that they feel comfortable doing so. And there's a question early on in the survey that asks people if they feel they have enough information to answer the survey accurately. So we'll go through that in a moment. To share again, Hanover was used by Greenwich. They were used by several other districts around as well for this type of work, because they're very good at developing the adaptive surveys that will sort of adjust based upon the responses that people give, and aggregating that data and sharing it with the district. So we want people to know that we won't have any identifiable information in this. Hanover will have that. They share it with us in the aggregate, as we go through, because we want people to feel comfortable giving us those responses. And if we put something together in Google or SurveyMonkey or something else, it's a whole different experience for people. So we are doing this through Hanover. They've had success with some of the other districts in gathering information and sharing that information out. So our timeline on this survey is to be able to administer it, give them an opportunity to analyze and aggregate the data and go through it all and get it back to us in time to present to the board in June. So we are still on that timeline to provide the board with enough information to give the administration solid direction by the end of June, so that we have our work to do over the summer and what have you, when we can get a lot of this work done. We're not building and defending budgets. We're not doing all of those other things that we do on a daily basis when the school year's in session. So I think that, so the timeline remains, and so the goal is to get enough information to the board so that everyone is comfortable, one way or other, in giving the administration the direction that we need. The survey, you have it in front of you. It's a draft form now, but we are preparing to administer it next week. And I guess a conversation I'd like to have with the board briefly would be the youngest age of student who should be taking the survey. So as we go through this, if you'll just think about that for us. I came in thinking 8th grade, and then we heard from a very articulate and eloquent 7th grader. Makes me think that maybe we want to include 7th grade as well. So we can revisit that question after we go through the questions in the survey as well, if that's all right with you. It's very convincing, so I need to give 7th grade their due. So Dr. Cranty and I met on Monday, and we had a couple of hour call with Hanover to review the instrument that you have in front of you. We had some suggestions for changes, which they put in place. And then there's another piece that I sent to them today that I'll just speak to when we get to that part of the survey instrument itself. Again, it's not publicly available at this point because we want people to take it live, and we don't want to kind of
I don't think
jeopardize the validity of that, right? But what I do plan to do is invite a couple of folks to come sit with me the next couple of days this week and talk. I know that there are some people that are very involved, engaged with this, and we do want feedback from people before this goes live. So we're going to do that as well. You'll see. So if you don't mind me just walking you through this very quickly. Again, open to feedback, not thrilled about complete rewrites. But on page 3 is the breakdown, so this is the protocol of the document itself. So text in red italics indicates the logic, so that's sort of, it's an adaptive question, so it'll come to certain audiences. If you click that you're a teacher, then it would go to, you'll see that identified in red. Green is the notes internally, not seen by the respondents. There's some of the questions respondents can only select one answer, some they can select multiple answers, and then if it's starred, which is a typical convention, it is a mandatory response. So if you flip over to page 4, this gives a brief introduction to the instrument itself. Anticipate about 15 minutes to take it. That's, if people are reading and moving through, it could certainly take longer. It's really not going to take less than that. So we want to let people know kind of up front what it's going to be. But it is the first opportunity for people to learn more about why we're looking at this, the science, a little bit about it, and the other information there. And so we'll make sure that the link where it says, please review the district's website about school start times, we'll be revisiting the website between now and then, updating it, making sure that it is very, very clear. I think the language, the intro on the website is clear about why we're doing this and what we're looking for and at, but we want to revisit that. And I think that people do like to click on videos, so we've talked about creating a quick 3-minute or so video to cover a couple of different topics. First couple of questions, as is typical, we ask people to identify their role. And then again, you see the red for question 2, so if they put that they're a staff member at question 1, it would ask them that next set of questions around what they do. If parents respond, it goes right to question 3, how many children currently attend New Canaan Public Schools? Now, the logic of it is, and they've used this with other surveys with success, is if you're a parent with multiple children, we can often think about our oldest child or think about that child that's closest to a transition in time or whatever. So what they found, in order to get the most representative sample of data from the parents, that they use an arbitrary indicator such as the child whose birthday is earliest in the calendar year. So by asking everyone to answer in terms of that child, they get the most representative responses because it's going to be arbitrary for each family. It could be different grades. Now, parents are given the opportunity to retake for each child if they'd like to, but this is a way to sort of capture that most representative sample on the first time through. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. We had questioned that a little bit. They shared with us that some of the other things they tried and they had less success, and they find that this is the most successful way to have that representative sample. Again, you see the questions, and it's the red will kind of flow to those different folks. If you go to page 6, and again, these are those intro questions about things. Page 6, you see community members, because we are also going to send this out to the community. I spoke with Mike today. He's going to work up a press release for us that we can send out to our local press agents and folks, and we're also going to work with Tucker, with the chamber, ask her to share it with chamber members and others, because I think we want the community input as well. I think that's also important. So we're going to do some outreach. Last time we tried to include the community, and the outreach wasn't very successful. We only had a handful of community folks respond. So we're going to make that another part of the effort here to try to get as representative a sample as we can.
To me, the most important piece of this is before school or after school activities, just making sure that we understand, potential impacts there.
Right.
Yeah.
And you'll see that for the community members, their survey will be pretty fundamentally different than a parent survey, than a child survey, because they're not going to be asked about their anticipated impact of a change in school schedule to a child, but they will be asked questions around do they employ students after school? Do they have flexibility in that employment if they were to be later in the morning, those types of things. So we really try to tailor it to the folks that are taking the survey and answering the questions. So you see that on page 6. And these are those community member questions on page 7. Things like, do you have flexibility to change the schedules for your activity in response to changing school times, to try to understand that. And then there's a whole sort of Likert scale of responses that folks have. It's not a yes, no. You get the sense that way. So if you jump over to page 8, that's where you see that question 16. The question is, please state your level of agreement with the following statement. I have enough information to answer a survey about the potential impacts of school schedules. And then there's a range, again, strongly disagree to strongly agree. If folks respond strongly disagree, or neither disagree or agree, they'll have a pop-up will come, which will ask them to please review the district's website with a link to that website. And again, we'll have information there specifically to help people to develop their understanding prior to taking. They can go back if they say, okay, do this for a while, and then they're going to take the survey later. They can leave it, come back to it, and complete it at a later time. So again, we're trying to do what we can, given the constraints that we're under now, with without having the speaker able to come. And I think that's the best we can do. I think it should be helpful. If they say agree or strongly agree, they'll move right into the next page. Okay? On the next page, it'll be a one-screen kind of page there where they'll be given 5 different schedules. And it just gives you gives the folks what the options are. The first is, and these will all be in different order for everybody that looks at it. So I'll just say first, second, third, fourth, but it won't necessarily be in that order as people work through it. But the current schedule is included. The 2-tiered schedule is included. The 3-tiered schedule is included that flipped the first and second tier. If you remember, that was part of the TAS work that they had done. A 3-tiered schedule is here that has the 3 elementaries starting at 7:40, as the high school at 8:25, and then Saks at 9:05. And then the 3-tiered schedule is here where nobody starts before 8 o'clock, with the high school at 8 o'clock to 2:35, the 3 elementaries 8:45 to 3:15, and then Saks at 9:30 to 4 o'clock. So those were the options that came forward. So you've got, again, the 2-tiered schedule, and then 3 examples of the 3-tiered schedule based on the feedback from Mark Walsh and the costing out that he's done and some other things that we've looked at.
Are we going to say anything about costs, or?
Not yet.
Sorry.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's
Jumping
purposeful.
ahead.
So that waits until the end, and we'll
Yeah.
get there in a bit.
Okay.
Yep. Good question. So again, if for parents of 2 or more children, it's a reminder about whose perspective to take that through as they think about it. And then what will happen is there'll be a chart for one of those scheduling options will come up, and then they'll be asked to rate from very negative to very positive the impact of the schedule excuse me, on the following aspects of the child's life. If it's a parent or if it's the student, impact of the schedule on your life. And the items, and these again will be randomized, but they are physical health, so sleep, time for meals, mental, emotional health, stress, and anxiety, family routines, availability of transportation to from school, time for homework, time for extra help, student part-time employment, that'll be only for high school respondents, of course, participation in outside activities, personal time outside of school, before school care, after school care, safety, traffic congestion, beginning of the day, end of the day, work schedules, parent meetings. And then staff will have the same chart, of the schedule, but a different set of questions that they'll receive. And it'll be, again, about physical health, emotional health, commuting time, to provide or find childcare, ability to be involved in your school, advisor, coaching, extra help. And you see the questions there, grading, lesson planning, what have you. Now, the community members' questions are the shortest. So if someone says they're a community member, the schedule will pop up. It'll ask about traffic, it'll ask about work schedules, and then ask a little bit about business you do before school or after school. So one of the advantages of using Hanover, and they had done the survey for us earlier, they really, they went through some of those responses from the first round, and that's where a lot of these questions came from. These were items of importance or concern that came from parents, from students, areas of sort of that they were focusing on a bit. So this is a way to sort of hopefully dive a little bit deeper in the understanding on folks' perceptions of how this would improve, and how it would change. They also have, again, all the research that they've done for those few other school districts, and they're able to, because that information is public, they're able to use all of that and help to inform what we're doing. So on page 12, again, there's another snapshot of a schedule. Again, these will be random, but just to kind of walk through it, and then you see the list of questions. And this is a big part of it. You see on page 14, the chart at the top and the questions. And 15, so it goes through that protocol. And to your point, we haven't talked about cost yet, because we really want people to think about the schedule itself in the beginning.
Right.
And then we shift over to, please indicate to what degree you support or oppose the adoption of the following schedules. And then it's asking, and then the schedules will randomly be in there as the charts. So it's where it says insert image of schedule. That'll be one of the tables from one of those charts. And then this is where the cost would be included. And that's anticipated, you really don't know until this is,
Right.
when we get direction from the board in June, if it's to say, okay, really flesh out this option, we want to see what this really looks like, then we would be able, that's the work that we'd be doing over the summer. We're looking at runs, we're looking at actual kids, we're looking at the buses, we're looking at, all of those variables and all of those details. So I did, if we go back to the page that has the schedule, so it's page 8, and we're able to use the work that TAS has done for us around the costing and some different considerations and discussions. Of course, the current schedule, there's no additional cost. As you know, going from a 3-tiered solution to a 2-tiered solution is the most significant cost, and that they had that pegged at about 1.3 million per year. So I'm giving a range in this because you just don't know until you know. So I don't ever want to just give a single number like that. So the range on that is going to be, it's $1.2 to $1.4 million a year. The 3-tiered schedule example 1 is the $250,000 to $350,000 a year. Again, that's driven by the need for additional buses at South for the walkers early in the morning if you were to flip those tiers. The 3-tiered schedule example 2 is $300,000 to $450,000 a year. Again, you have to have more buses for the early walkers, and you need a few others, given the 3 elementaries starting at once and SACs dismissing altogether. And then the 3-tiered schedule, example 3, the costs there are between $100,000 and $300,000 a year. And so that's backed up by the work that we asked Mark to do as they did their analysis, and when Lou came out a couple of times, who works with Mark to do that. And I want to really give credit to Roy Walder, who has taken various scenarios that we've thrown at him and spent weeks sort of going through and working those up and figuring those out, and been able to help us to see what's feasible and what's not, as far as what can really work. So as those options come up at the end, it will have either this option is projected to be cost neutral, or this option is projected to cost approximately, the 2-tiered would be $1.2 to $1.4 million per year.
Right.
And then it just comes in, it's not, and then it doesn't say yes or no, but it gives an idea of, sort of strongly oppose, neither support nor oppose, support, or strongly support for each of those options. And then we also ask, folks, give them an opportunity to provide other feedback for us. Ask parents if they'd like to take it again for another one of their children, to go right ahead and do that. And then when they click on the final kind of thank you, we talk to them about doing something where it goes for folks to explain what the next steps are, so that everyone's aware kind of how we're going to use these data, what it's going to mean, and what those next steps for the board are going to be. This is very important, so we want to make sure that we get it out as widely as we can and provide people with enough opportunity to share feedback and information with the board.
I think it's well done, but based on what I've seen thus far. But any questions?
Open for questions or
Sherry?
feedback or thoughts? Yep.
Yeah, no, I think it's well done. A couple of thoughts. One is 15 minutes is a long time for a survey, and I've looked at research around survey. I think actually probably more than half would actually not even consider taking the survey, and I'm wondering if either we can really look at that number and, Hanover with their survey expertise, either if we can lower that number or do we need to include that number, and or should we have an option of before, if they click, before you go, here's just an option to, to provide some open-ended feedback on the topic if they're not willing to take this survey in its entirety. The reality is, and research shows
Worry
that
about people should take it,
most
yeah.
people will not take a 15-minute survey, unfortunately.
So we can
Even if
talk to
it's
them
about-
about different ways to try to shorten it. One thing we do ask them for feedback on the current schedule and maybe around kind of on that scale. So maybe there's a way we can talk to them about trying to shorten it, and maybe it's some of the demographic questions at the beginning. It's hard because everything flows into the next, and we want to present enough options for people to kind of,
I
think about
understand
it,
that
but-
we want all of this information, but we also want
People
as
take
high participation as possible, to get, and we really do want thorough feedback. We don't just want the people that feel strongest on this to complete it, which is what happens, research shows that's what happens when you have, onerously long surveys. So just a thought on that.
Yep.
And then,
No, we'll take a look and we'll talk with them. We have a call, we're actually meeting with Hanover on Wednesday. They're coming to town to finalize some things with us.
my other question is.
Just on that topic, one way to shorten it is to reduce the number of scenarios that we show. So, we have on here, for example, a third three-tier schedule scenario that has SACs ending at 4 o'clock. So it's something we can talk about now as, an example of something that we could eliminate, or we can include that. I'm not supportive really of a schedule that has SACs starting at 9:30 and ending at 4. It just seems
Well, and I'll
really late.
share just for the context of why that's there. There have been some questions from folks around why we'd like to see a scenario where no school starts before 8 o'clock.
Right.
And we're still in a 3-tiered system. So the challenge becomes that 40 to 45 minutes in between at dismissal time. So that's where we have the 8 o'clock start for the high school and a 9:30 start.
Right, so
for
maybe
SAC.
that's a
So
reason to
that's why it's
include it,
there,
right?
But, if it's not going to be a true option,
Right.
given what it is, then it would save people time, yeah. So,
Right, the other option.
and I'm not arguing for or
Yeah,
against
yeah.
it, just
Yeah,
explaining
yeah.
why it's there.
One
So I think it's a
option
good
is
question.
part of the education process is to maybe outline that simple fact, which is, we need 40 to 45 minutes in between tiers unless we add a significant number of buses.
And even that only gets you so far because of the 125 miles of roads.
Right.
And that's part of what our analysis keeps showing.
Right.
Right.
So, that could be something that we have, you can ask Hanover. I don't know if that impacts, people's answers, but that could be a good lead-in, to the survey so that people understand that these aren't just random, options.
Right,
These
and we
are-
can put that on the page,
Yeah.
and we'll have the TAS presentation there,
Right.
we'll have some other pieces as part of the context, right?
Right.
How we got to this point, right? This
Right.
isn't a starting point, this is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which,
we're-
they would see that if they went to the website and spent some time there or looked at some of our videos, but
Mm-hmm.
if they haven't done that, maybe a few lead-in sentences would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
We would probably also want to include in that why SACs has to be on the last dismissal time. Because if we're going to dismiss SACs all at one time, so that it has to be the last drop-off. It has to be the last school that gets picked up and the last school that gets, all those kids have to get dropped off, and that's the 125 miles of roads.
Right.
So.
Because you have to do
but,
their.
Yeah, people may not
end of the day
understand
in
that
2
fully.
waves.
If it's
So
not.
maybe you come up with like 5 or 10 bullets that are just, key constraints or something like that we're working with.
Yeah, it's probably the logic behind a
Right.
little bit, so people understand, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay. Penny?
So I have just a question about the different schedules we're giving. In terms of the example 1 and example 2 for the 3-tiered. So what are the constraints that make it that the example 1 has to start at 7:30 rather than 7:40, whereas example 2 allows you to start south, east, and west at 7:40?
Sure, so the difference is, because you have only the high school in the middle tier, it's by itself. So example 1 is flipping your first and second tier, right?
Right.
So you still have SACs split, and you have SACs 5, 6, and South going first at 7:30. And then you have the high school and SAC 7, 8 going at 8:15 and 8:20. And then you have East, West at 9:05. So you're literally just flipping, but you've got balance between the tiers as far as the number of buses that you need, similar to what we have now. Going to the example 2, you have the 3 elementaries on the first tier, and then the high school by itself. So what you're able to do is stage some buses at SACs in order to begin their dismissal while the other buses are completing their longer runs from the elementaries. And then those buses would become your second wave to bring the students home from SACs. So the SACs dismissal at the end of the day is going to be in 2 waves, and they'll probably be 10 or 12 minutes apart. That gives those buses enough time to get to SACs for that second wave is the kind of the modeling that we're looking at. So because you have the high school by itself, you do need a few more buses in the 3-tier example too. But because we have the high school by itself, and you don't need all of those buses to bring high school kids home, plus you have a different ridership at the high school because of all the activities and everything else, you're able to get those buses to SACs in time to do that. Again, you don't know it till you do it, but that's the logic behind it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. So I guess I would imagine that the administration would have different educational viewpoints on these different scenarios, the different 3-tiered scenarios. And can you say anything about what the support is among the administration for are all 3 of these examples considered viable examples by the administration?
Well, I think
I wouldn't want to put out an option that, then we subsequently find out the administration
Right, great question.
would not back.
Sure. So every principal and every administrator, every teacher wants to start at 8:15.
Right.
So we didn't put forward a 1-tier solution, but if we could, that's what everybody wants. That's the
Right.
best time to go. But really, we've been talking with the administration about this. The high school folks, they have a committee that's been talking about it a bit. I've shared the presentations with the folks at the high school. I know they've been talking about it in a whole group. Each one of these solves some problems and may create some new ones that they need to look at, but they're aware of all of the different options. There's nothing that's untenable, although I will say that, as Brendan mentioned before, the 3-tiered schedule, example 3, that has SACs starting at 9:30 and ending at 4, raised quite a few eyebrows. Because of the 4 o'clock dismissal means it's 4:20 or so before all the students are off the lot, and people are getting in their car around 4:30. And it's a large building with over 130, 140 staff members. Many of them travel to Merritt daily to get home, and so what that means for their kind of flow. So that, if looking at these, and Jill, certainly you and I both, going and talking to people and doing the outreach that we've done, that one is probably the most problematic. The others, what they are very much in favor, if we can figure out a way to do it, of having the 3 elementaries together because of the professional learning opportunities and other opportunities that could create. They're very much in favor at SACS of trying to have one school run as one building, so have one start time and one end time for grades 5 through 8. Because again, of the opportunities that creates. I think, again, when we spoke briefly about some of the advantages of having the middle school as the 3rd tier, as far as what happens in the morning with those guys, what in the afternoon. The student who spoke tonight talked about the activities not starting before 5, so there is still time in order to try to make all of that work. So there are some good positive things, I think, about the middle school being on that 3rd tier. And again, it has to be if we're going to keep it all together because of the 2-wave dismissal and the limitations of the facility and the buses. So I think that I heard some very positive feedback about those concepts, and it does speak to, if we're going to look at making a change, trying to do some that advantages every student at every grade across the district. There was some questioning around starting the elementary students first at the 7:40, and is that the best option? It's again we wind up being constrained in anything but a 2-tier system with the 40 to 45 minutes or so in between. It's sort of how late you want to go, and you have to map backwards, and that's what we've been trying to do to build this.
I mean, the interesting thing is, even with the 2-tier system, the 2nd tier starts at 9:10. Because of how big the town is, right? It's just, It takes a really long time to get a bunch of kids on buses around town.
It does, and the locations of our schools aren't great. We're on this side of town, and we have to get all the way up north and all the way back. And again, I've said it before, our buses have to do the speed limit, and some of the speed limits it takes a long time. And they're stopping along the way, and there are kids, they live all the way out in the very edges of town. And we have to go get them, and sometimes we even go get them and turn around in the other town, turn around in New York, turn around in Wilton. And they do the same thing with us. So it's just the way it breaks out. It does depend where the students are living, and that's where building the live model over the summers and into next year, as we think about, will give us more concrete numbers around cost, but it's just the reality. It's, it's, somebody asked me, what's the biggest constraint? And I said, it's time and space. If we can just figure that out, we'd be all right. But but I think, we're trying to put together options that solve problems and that can position the district in all of our buildings at each of the levels and try to be respectful of the important consideration around our students' health, and their well-being. We're trying to do this in a way that can really happen.
Yep, Deanna?
So I guess to go back to Brendan's comment, could you get a sense from Hanover about how much time taking one of these options off would do, would save? And, obviously, because you're talking about this going out next week.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're not going to have another board meeting, so I guess we just need to, I would think maybe we should get a sense of the board as to if it's an appreciable savings of time on the survey, and if,
my guess is, based on the way this is structured, is it's going to be like 2.5 minutes or something, right? Because it's duplicative for each one of the scenarios. So if it went down to 12.5 minutes, is that enough? It'd be great if it were.
I'm not a survey expert,
under
so
10
I have no
minutes,
idea. Survey
but
expert down at the end of
At the
that.
same time, we want it to be meaningful,
just
But that's the thing.
But on that-
So if you say it's 10 to 12 minutes in the intro and folks can work through it.
But just another, on that point, is if we're looking at options, and we're looking at a two-tiered option that costs $1.3 million more per year in this economic climate, should we have some discussion? Should we be considering that?
Yeah.
When we can't get our
agree.
operating budget approved as is,
Are we
I
throwing
don't-
out a false sense of
Hope.
Hope. That's what I agree. I think you set people's expectations unfairly because we throw it out there as an option. And I think you could take a sense of the board after going through the budget, the budget season, and
I'm hopeful, but I have somewhat low expectations that we'd be able to get $1.4 million
That's
per year.
increase.
That's per year.
Yes,
Yeah,
per year.
I know, yeah.
Yes. So
So, I have to say, looking at the options I would really like to get a lot of feedback on, given that, are I'm looking at the three-tier options with a lot of interest. And I have a feeling it's really more example 1 and example 2, because I don't want to, I'm thinking that we've always sort of been told in prior discussions that stopping a school at 3:35 was like the last time where we were really going to start losing. We were going to have more trouble recruiting staff, recruiting teachers. So I'm looking at example 3 as possibly, not one I would immediately be drawn to.
I would agree with you. I think if you want to take a sense of the board, Brendan, I think it would be helpful to shorten this up and get people to take it. And, and there are real options in here that, even if everybody loves it, at $1.3 million, I don't know anybody on this board that can, that's teachers, that's increased class sizes, that's significantly reduced programming. That's changing the way we educate our kids in this community. And I don't know that any of us are willing to sign up for that. I don't know. I haven't, but I think that's, if we take 2 options out of here that are, we know the board won't support going into the survey, why are we wasting the survey takers' time? And we should be really focusing on what we would be willing to support and get a good response.
Right. Any other thoughts? Sure.
I agree, Deanna, although I would like to see example 2. Could we do 7:45? That just sounds so much better. No, it does. It does. If we're sending elementary kids to
Do
start.
you like 3:40?
Just, yeah.
I do, I'm okay
It
with
just moves
3:40.
everything back by 5
I know,
minutes.
I'm okay with that.
I don't know. I'm sort of sensitive, having had conversations around sports at the high school. I think I'm somewhat sensitive there, and then I'm also sensitive, literally every minute you get closer to 5 if you're, leaving Saks in the afternoon. A 5-minute later departure could mean like 15 minutes more on the merit. So I don't know. I batted that around myself, but I feel like 7:40 is probably better.
I can
And
look
we
and see
do
if we
have-
can
we do
squeeze
have
5 minutes in
Wilton.
between. I don't know if
We have
can.
Wilton that's done 7:40 successfully.
Right.
And they did it years ago with a swap. They flipped tiers.
Yeah. And we don't have research around elementary. I mean, I have not seen any research
We've
around
looked, we've
elementary
asked.
start times. I have not
Hanover
seen
has
any
done a
research.
study for,
Right.
a review of the lit for
Right.
us, and have come up pretty empty-handed. There's
Right.
really not much out there.
Yeah. I would, okay, I'm going to just throw it out there, and you can do what you want. I say we take off the example 3, unless anybody disagrees.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Does anybody
Yeah.
disagree? That's the last one with the 4 PM ending time.
So that's that was in response to the question of if no school started before 8 o'clock.
Correct.
And you still kept a 3-tier system.
Correct.
Okay.
I think 4 o'clock is an untenable time to end. But I may not be representing, that's why.
No,
Well, I
that's
guess
how
I wanted
Why don't we
to-
get a sense
So
of that?
I'm-
I guess-
I'm totally supportive of
Yeah,
that.
I agree.
That's what
Sure.
I've heard, but I guess I've wanted confirmation of that from the administration. Yeah,
Well,
I
as
think
we
I think it
talked about
works.
it
I think it
before-
works from a parent perspective. I think you could actually probably make it work from an extracurricular perspective, but I'm really worried about how it would work from a staff perspective.
Well, and I think educationally, you would have 5th grade students who were in class for a very long, it was be a very long day for them. Our younger students in that. Again, as I shared before, of the options, that one did cause some concern.
So
Yeah, and we did hear, I remember we heard from our elementary and I think 5th grade teachers that the younger students, when they got further into the day, had issues, staying on task
they
and
did.
focused.
And that's with our 335 at East and West in our 4th grade.
Right.
And then, right. So, and they're
I've
a
heard
year
that
older.
feedback about my own son. So.
I'm thinking about when I would always go for a cup of tea.
I think too, for teachers, if they were doing after-school help, at Saks, I mean, you just couldn't do it. I think it would just be too late at that
Yeah,
hour. at
everything
night.
would have to shift to the morning.
Yeah, and I also think about the VPA. I know that that's 2 to 4 hours of pre-show time. I'm not sure if they've weighed in, but I don't know how
He
that
did.
works. Is it
Alan was in that
before school?
conversation.
Is
And
it-
didn't love that option.
Yeah, I could see why.
Okay,
So can we take?
sounds
Okay.
like,
So I think
that
I would
the
be,
sense we're
I
getting?
would,
mean,
I would
okay.
be
Seems
supportive
like
of
everybody's on the same page.
taking off example 3.
Okay.
Should we save 2.5 minutes? Can we find 2.5 more?
Well, I guess what I do want to think about as a board, is there a way, I mean, you asked me this as a parent, and we just put the cost in as sort of an odd factor at the end. All the parents, all the teachers, everybody, you're going to get much higher positives for the 2-tiered schedule. Is there a way, but looking at our representatives, valiant as they are fighting for us, that to me is like a really heavy lift.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Deanna that it's going to mean that we're going to have to find savings, if we went with that, find savings elsewhere, which means that we're talking about, programs and the quality of the program.
Yeah, I mean, just for context, our budget this year was a 1.4? Was a $1.4 million increase, and that's,
Right.
the salaries, that's the move forward costs on insurance and everything.
And there's a
all
decent
in.
chance it's going to be more than that next year. with
There is, because
health
we were
insurance
fortunate to have
trends.
some very good
Yeah.
offsets.
Right.
But that, I only say it to put what is 1.2 million to 1.4 million in our budget. This year, it's all of what it takes to run the operation, next year, with new costs and what have you. But again, it is an option that people have been in favor of, when they look at what if you had a magic wand, what's the best one? And like that's, and
Yeah.
I understand why.
I mean, the way I think about it is, when we get this survey back, we're going to have, in cohorts of people, we're going to have essentially a rank of the options. And then I think it's on us to say, okay, we're going to take $1 million out of our programming so that we can spend $1.3 million on a two-tier system, or we're going to do nothing, or we're going to go to, a three-tier system that's a little bit more expensive, but are better start time options for all of our kids. But I think that's on us. We're not going to just take the survey and say, okay, we're going to pick number one, and then let the chips fall where they may from a budgetary standpoint. I think that's what we have to do.
But do you even think, I mean, I see what you're saying,
Yeah.
but if we came back and everybody wanted a 1.3, as a board, I don't know that anybody's there. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't know. I don't think the town would be supportive of us in this economic environment with the way the state is in such a dire economic situation. For us to say we are going to spend $1.2 to $1.4 million additionally every year from here out, I
we'll have
couldn't
to-
go into a budget meeting next year with my head held high. I couldn't, because we're not
Well-
being good partners with the town, I don't think, when we try to do that.
Yeah, so where I could possibly disagree is if we feel like, we're going to move forward with a budget that's, call it, $92, $93 million next year, and we think we're going to reallocate $1 million of our budget into, a two-tier system, and we decide that it's in the best interests of students to remove that $1 million from 2 or 3 programs. And we think, because of all of the work that we've done with the administration, that that's the absolute best thing that we can do for all the students in New Canaan, then that is what it is. That's what we should bring forward. I don't think we're there yet in terms of exactly what the budget looks like. Obviously, we just
Or what
finished-
do we mean to
Let's
finished this
play
year.
devil's advocate on that, though,
Yeah,
what you
but
just
hold-
said.
Yeah, one
Okay.
other thing, which is, we may decide that we want to increase the budget by that incremental $1.3 million, and we can explain to everybody in town why we're doing that, why it's the absolute best thing for all the kids in town. And it may be that the town council and the Board of Finance disagree with us and say, you got to cut $1 million. Okay, well, then we're not making that change. Or maybe we're going back to a 3-tier system. Maybe operationally that's impossible, but I think we should preserve the option to make the decision as to exactly what happens from a start times perspective and from an overall budget perspective, rather than just, throwing it out and saying, we absolutely can't do it because it's been such a difficult budget process, or things are, are tough in the state. I just don't, I don't want to throw out an option that may be the best, for the kids in town, just because we're under a lot of pressure.
And I understand that. I guess if I were to sit in a Board of Finance or a town council role and say, well, you're willing to pull out programming now, I don't,
But it's only in the scenario where we as a Board of Education say, we're going to allocate more resources here. And it's not necessarily going to be one for one, right? We're going to allocate more resources toward changing school start times because we think on a net basis that's better. Even if we have to pull some amount of money, it could be $1 million, it could be $500,000, it could be something else out of other programs to meet what we think is a reasonable budget to bring forward to the Board of Finance and Town Council. And we just don't know, we don't know what that is yet.
Well, and
I would say that I think we should keep it in, this is data gathering.
I just want people to take the survey, and I worry that, Sherry does this a lot, and she is very knowledgeable on survey taking, and I can tell you, as someone who rarely takes a survey because I don't want to sit in front of a computer, I mean, I think you're right. I think, we have a huge risk of skewing the survey to a certain group in town that will sit and take a 15 or 12 or 15-minute survey, and others' voices will not be heard. So I just want to make sure that we get the broadest participation, and that it's an accurate
Yeah, I'm all for
reflection.
that. So if there are ways to, keep it to under 10 minutes, then we should try to do that. I just don't want to throw out, options
no.
that we think are reasonably viable, even if they're expensive.
And for what it's worth, I'd only say, I think I worry if we start pitting programs against start time. We say it's a one or the other kind of thing. Because one shouldn't diminish the other,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that ultimately, as we think about what the decision, if it were to be to try to move forward with that most sort of significant overhaul of the entire system, I think you really get into, it's very difficult and defeating to start saying, well, what programs are we
Yeah.
going to eliminate in order to do this thing? So you
And
mentioned
I
it briefly.
personally don't think we'll be there.
You may do better by sort of thinking about, well, whatever the option is, maybe it goes forward and we commit to bringing forward a move ahead budget, which we've done over the last couple of years, as you all know. I mean, our budgets have been incredibly lean in lots of ways. Commit to that, and then this not resulting in the elimination of opportunities that our kids currently have.
Right.
You've heard me talk about it all throughout the budget season. I think that's so one of our core mission is to provide as many opportunities as possible for our kids to help them actualize who they are as learners and students and individuals, what have you. So to think that one would be exclusive of the other, I'm struggling with that.
Well, I'll just tell you, I don't think a two-tier schedule is really workable. But at this, knowing what I know right now, I don't think it's workable because I think we will be forced to make, because of the pressures that we're under from the town bodies and the state and otherwise, I think we'll be forced to make decisions that we don't want to make about programs. If we decide we're going headlong into a two-tier bus system, I just think we'll be in a really bad spot from a budget standpoint.
So the question becomes, you don't want to be disingenuous with people, right? So
Yes.
you're asking them
No,
to
I
provide
get
their
it.
feedback about an
Yeah.
option. And I guess you
I know,
could easily argue both
yeah,
sides of
I-
this, but
yeah, and I
maybe
struggle with
there's,
it too,
is it important for a clear disclaimer to be in there, something along the lines of the fact that, this, and doing that multiple times throughout the survey for folks. So we'll talk with Hanover when we meet with them. We'll see what their suggestions are. We'll share with them this exact concern, that we don't want people to be, we want people to understand what's a realistic option around all of this. And, in different times and different economic times or whatever, maybe this would be a viable option. There are some districts that have made the change and they've spent over $1 million in order to do it. And that's an annual cost that they absorb and that's what they do. Times are different and that's okay.
Yeah, one of the reasons, sitting here where I sit today is not, the way things will look, I know, is not the way things will look in January when we're starting to review the budget.
Sure.
So, my views then, other people's views then may change. So.
Okay. So we'll talk with Hanover. We'll share whatever feedback, we can with the board around that. And our goal is to get this out next week.
So just
Yeah.
moving on
Sure.
from that then, just another question I would want you to review with Hanover is just the retakes. I'm a little concerned about someone being able to take multiple,
Sure, we
and
spent a
how-
little bit of time talking about that. They have controls in place. And that's another thing that they're able to, they know how many students respondents have. They have, there's different pieces that they go into and technology they use. So if folks do take retakes and they don't actually have that many children in the system, unfortunately, all of their results will be tossed. And we'll be
Okay.
clear about that.
And then, just to clarify then, so the survey results and all of the data that we need to make this decision will be presented in June, and that includes the traffic study results and the master schedule review and all the other pieces that
The
we talked
master
about?
schedule review is an ongoing discussion and kind of research that's going on at the high school. They've got some folks that are doing some work, and that's going to continue at that level for now. But I think that, if there's more information that the board would like to see or hear, we did review the traffic study and sort of go through what the recommendations of that were, and we've implemented some of those already, as you know, the folks at dismissal, the campus monitors, moving the buses out, doing that kind of work. So we've really, as things have come, we've tried to bring them forward, but this is sort of the the anchor of what we're planning to do for June. But if there are other things that you think would be helpful, or any board member thinks would
Well,
be
the key
helpful,
with
let
the-
us know in advance, and we'll prepare it, and we'll bring it forward.
Right, okay.
And the key with the traffic study was, the conclusion was you couldn't shorten the tiers or the time between the tiers lower than like 40 to 45 minutes, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
So I just think,
And-
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, and that I think all of the board members should be aware then that they really need to be ready to voice their opinion in June and need to be reviewing all of the data that's been presented to date, and then obviously the survey results. And if there's any other information that we need to make that decision, we should let you know. I'm
Absolutely.
just paraphrasing, but.
Yeah, no, that's right. And the idea is that we'll get direction from the board in order to develop whatever scenario is preferred, however that might be, so that we can then in early September share more information with the board and then start the discussion about budgeting.
What's the time period for the survey response? Is it
2 weeks?
2 weeks?
Is what we're looking at. That's really for folks outside of the school. The students will do it in school. They'll have a window of time to take it, and then any student response that's taken outside of that window won't be considered. So we can control it that way, and then we'll use the 2 weeks for parents and others.
Okay, because I'm just wondering, is there a time or times where we have a captive audience of parents? We could have it on laptops or iPads to try and capture, people while they're here or wherever over the next couple of weeks. I think there's PTC meetings this week, so I'm not sure that works out, but
Yeah,
just
we can
something to think
communicate out
about.
and take a look.
If sometimes when parents are in the building, they might be willing to spend 12 minutes
Yeah, that's a good.
longer. Yeah.
10 to 12.
Deanna?
So when someone's taking the survey, will they have the ability, let's say they, get partway through it and get called away or whatever, will they be able to just resume at a, few hours later, reopen and continue on, or do they have to start over?
I'm not sure. We didn't ask them that question because, we thought everyone would be so excited to take it. As you do these things, you get very excited about it. We can ask them on Wednesday. It's a unique link per person, so there may be an ability to re-click the link, and it might take them to whatever page they stopped at. But I don't know, so I don't want to get ahead of it. We'll ask them that on Wednesday.
I would say if we can have that, particularly since we're saying you can take it for multiple children, you should be able to have a save and resume ability.
We'll find out.
All right. Other questions, comments? All right. Thank you. Okay, next is the statement of accounts with Dr. Keating.
All right. Well, there's no transfers on this account, so it's very brief. We're currently 75% through the fiscal year, 70% through the school year, and we've actually paid bills of $60,526,444. 67.4% of our budget, that totals. Of the balance of the budget, we have 28.6% of it encumbered. 77% is in salaries, and that's very normal. And the unencumbered balance is $3.5 million, which represents 3.9% of our accounts. Substitute teachers, stipends, overtime, energy, and utilities are the main reasons why we still have funds unencumbered. And I would just like to mention at this time, we continue to have the over-expenditure for tuition out of district for our excess cost students. We've been working with the town for several months now to inform them that we plan, based on the agreement that the board and the town had back in 2016, to access those funds through a credit to our account. We have somewhat of a conflict going right now with the town's finance director in terms of process with that, and we're going to continue to pursue that this week to come to a resolution. The law does permit those funds to go in as a credit to your budget, to our budget. That was the agreement, and that's what we're going to pursue.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Deanna?
I don't have a question, I have a comment, and Darlene has been here long enough, and probably Dr. Lutzy, I feel like it's Groundhog Day again. This was 4 years ago under a different finance director. I don't understand why we continue to have to revisit the same issue over and over again. Maybe we should talk to the, I don't know if it's auditors or people in the finance department about like processes and procedures at the town level so that every time we have because it's every time we run into this issue with out-of-district placements and going over, it literally is Groundhog Day here. And, you shouldn't be spending hours dealing with this. There should be processes and protocols that everyone knows, and you don't have to re-educate every time and go through this headache and heartache when, the money is there for that purpose. So I don't know if there's people we can communicate with to make this more effective or efficient on your behalf. But I know Penny has lived through this. Darlene has lived through this many times. Jill has.
Well, it's important to note, it's a same-year reimbursement grant, and its purpose is to help districts for high-cost students in that same year. So the law is very clear about where the money goes. If there's a need, if the budget in this area is overspent, then the purpose of that excess cost grant is to make that budget whole. And then if there's remainder, then our agreement has been that, it can be with the town. And they can take it as income, because we grossed up that number for this purpose, because this is a very unpredictable line. Districts can get into trouble from time to time with this. So we grossed up the number to our anticipated cost with the understanding that if we were to go over that cost, then the same year excess cost grant reimbursement would fill the gap. And that's what we're asking them to do.
It's just a flow through from the town.
It is. As Joanne explained to me today, it's a journal entry.
Right.
So that's what we're asking to do. We've done it before. It's the right thing to do based on the purpose of that money, why it exists, why the state sends it back to towns. And I do believe that there's a legal opinion around this that agrees with what we're saying. And I do believe that most of the folks in town government understand and agree with us. And so I'm optimistic.
I think it will be
Even Bill
resolved.
Murray learned.
But we will not give up until we have agreement.
No, we won't give up.
Okay, so please keep us informed on how this is going, and we're certain that it'll all work out, but
It will.
it does feel a little bit like Groundhog Day, I will say that. Groundhog Decade, because we've been doing this excess cost grant.
Okay, next up are the action items involving 2 South School PTC donations. Dr. Lutzy?
Yes, the first is for the kindergarten play structure. You see it in your packet there. The South PTC has very generously done quite a bit of research, and they're looking at replacing the climber that's there. Whilst, as they wrote in their beautiful letter, students have enjoyed it for a long time. There's new equipment that's more appropriate for them over there in the kindergarten playground. So they're looking at replacing that, the engineered wood fiber that comes with it. They've been working with the contractor to actually do the work. So the total here, and you see the information there in your packet, is $35,675. And this is work that we would look to do over the summer.
Great.
And we have spoken with Dan Clark about this and about this work happening, and he fully supports it.
Great. Another example of very generous PTC. Can I have a motion to approve that? Penny?
So moved.
Sherry? All those in favor? Thank you. Next is another South School PTC.
Yeah, so, we'll put the new equipment in, and now we want to protect it and to be sure that our students can use it in the heat of the summer and on those sunny days, because as you know, that kindergarten playground is exposed to sun most of the time. So this is a large shade tent that'll go over that blacktop area. Again, it's all priced out, and they've really, not surprisingly, they've really thought of everything. And so the total here is $5,940.82 to install that shade tent over that kindergarten area. It'll still be open and breezy, of course, but it'll protect it for the kids when they're out there. And it makes good sense given the location of the playground.
Great. Any questions? All right, can I have a motion? Katrina? Penny? All those in favor? Great, thank you. Thank you to the South School PTC.
Yeah.
Next up is comments from the public. Anyone? Ann?
I'm Ann Chemek. Thank you all so much for supporting us at South and approving the donations. And also, thank you for all of your continued efforts to figure out how to make healthy start times work for us in New Canaan. I know we all agree that it's too bad that the speaker wasn't able to be scheduled, but however, there have been studies that show that districts changing start times have been much more successful with parent education. I'm an example of that. My kids don't yet experience, what we hear from so many parents of kids in grades 7 through 12. They still wake up early, other than this morning when I got a preview of dragging them out of bed, still being on West Coast time. But anyway, I think until I really listened to what other parents have been saying, realized that 700 people had signed this petition, and I was kind of in the dark about the whole thing, I just didn't get it. And then I started to read the research, and I was like, wow, this is really important. So I think it is important to educate. I'm a pretty involved parent in the school system, and I still didn't know. So I think especially since we might be asking our elementary students to start earlier than many of them are accustomed to, it's just going to be critical to educate them. And then in terms of the survey, I guess I would really urge you to preview that survey with the statements from the major medical associations. I mean, that really resonates with me. It's not on our website right now. I think the info on their website is great, but when I hear that the AAP, the CDC, and the AMA is saying that we should do this, that's what resonates with me. Not that we're concerned about, our kids' stress levels or things like that. I'm like, wow, these are the major medical associations saying this is what we should do. And then I think too, just some sort of education showing that it's not a sleep hygiene or homework issue. Again, I've always thought it's a phone issue, just have your 10th grader put their phone to bed. But it's really that their biological sleep patterns are changing. So I think if there's a way to highlight that to the parents taking the survey, and it's showing the studies that show that students do get more sleep when start times are later. And I think just the need to highlight that 8 to 10 hours is the recommended amount of sleep. So many people I talk to with high schoolers, their kids are getting nowhere close to that. And I think it's just eye-opening to realize that, no, it's not a badge of honor to get 5 hours of sleep and take 12 AP classes. We're really focused on, being well here. So anyway, I guess I just hope we can keep focused on that changing start times is to greatly improve our kids' health and wellness and doing well when they are in school. And to me, that's more important than anything else. And I absolutely understand it's a tough budget environment, but I just think this is an important program when you're selling it to the town council and BOF. Thanks.
Thank you. Yep.
Really short. You have to stand on tiptoes to. I'm Karen Willett. Thinks this has been a really interesting conversation tonight. I was really glad to hear everyone's thoughts on this, on the start times. And thanks for all the time, Dr. Letts, that you spent on this. I just wanted to say that I very strongly support Brendan's comment that we probably should include something that says why these options are the options, because none of them are perfect. And I don't think people are going to understand why the status quo is not the best option unless we describe the constraints, meaning that if you don't want a later dismissal, then elementary has to go early. And that's why these are like that. And if you don't want anybody to go early or late, then you have to pay more money. Those are really the two factors. So I think it could be really helpful to educate the public on why these are the options that came out of all of this research. Because otherwise people are going to say, what, this doesn't make any sense. And also I just wanted to say that before you eliminate option 3, because of the teachers. Penny said, we know it is the best for families and for students. I mean, she didn't say exactly that, but she said she thinks families could get behind this option and students could get behind this option. It's a really good option, but the teachers wouldn't. So I think before you just outright eliminate that option with SACs, and the one I'm talking about is SACs dismissing at 4, maybe do a little research of maybe you have of what is the evidence that teachers are gonna have a mass exodus or be difficult to recruit. We know all of the evidence that supports the health of students with those options. What is the evidence before you just categorically throw that option out? Is there real evidence that the teachers are going to be a big problem with that 4 o'clock dismissal? And also, just an exception for that option 3, I'm curious why we don't have the high school at the middle tier, because and the elementary at 8, because that's actually the only option that complies with the AMA, CDC, and AAP recommendation to go at 8:30 or later for grades 7 through 12. And And I also strongly agree with Sherry's comment that 7:45 sounds a lot better than 7:40. And I would argue that 7:50 and pushing everything out by 10 minutes would actually get you to a very good option that a lot of people would accept. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
You guys are probably tired of hearing from me. I'm just going to be super short. Mrs. Parkhill, you asked about, are there any options for possibly getting information about this survey out to parents? Just so you know, there is a Saks open house, I believe it's this week. And maybe that would be an opportunity, if you've already rolled out the survey, to at least discuss it with parents in the classroom, or at least have some type of an introduction to get more participants. Mrs. West, I understand absolutely and couldn't agree with you more in terms of trying to get as many people as possible to fill out this survey, because you want as many respondents and as broad a picture from the community as you can get. But what I would caution you is, and I understand that 15 minutes is a long time, I would caution you, please don't have Hanover shorten the education portion of the survey. It sounds like we're now outsourcing educating people as to why they're going to be taking this survey. If I understood what you said, Dr. Lutzy, I may not have. Okay. I understand that the speaker didn't come, so the survey's rolling out this week. Is it?
Next week, I'm sorry.
Oh, next week. Okay, well then that, never mind about the open house then. Well, it was a thought, maybe that would help get the word out. I guess what I'm saying is, if in that survey there's going to be an explanation as to the why we're reaching out to the community, asking them about what we should do with our schools, if we're reaching out to community members that own shops in town, or whoever we're reaching out to in the community, the why is really important, because I think they're going to stand there and say, well, why are you asking me about when you should start and end your schools? So sort of to Karen's point, I think it's very important that they understand the research and the science behind needing to do this, that this is a public health issue with our students, or so it's been presented by the entire medical community. This is what we're doing as a board and as a town to respond to that. Because otherwise, I think they're going to be a little bit at a loss as to why they're being given the survey. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Next up is announcements and future business. Dr. Lutzy.
Sure, and our next meeting with the board is May 6th, but between now and then, I just want to take a brief moment to remind everyone about the color run this Saturday. If you haven't signed up yet, you can sign up online. It's nchs-st.org. It's put out, all the proceeds go into the New Canaan High School Scholarship Foundation to help students who need a little help for their college tuition, what have you. We have a wonderful scholarship foundation here at the school. People have been very generous through the years, and if you've been around for a while, you might recall years ago our students would spend the day going door to door, the scholarship drive, going around town and ringing doorbells and looking to generate donations that way. A couple of years ago, a group got together and said, let's rethink this and let's do something fun that brings the community together. So instead of trying to ask people to be home alone on these days when we come around, let's try to bring everyone together, do something fun. And they've had great success with the color run. So I hope that people are able to get out. You can sign up online, do it as an individual, do it as a group. Lots of volunteers involved with this, and it's really a special thing for our community, a great tradition that was started a couple of years ago. So wanted to give them a quick plug and say we'll get back to you with information after speaking with Hanover on Wednesday. Thanks.
Sounds good. Thank you. Next up is adjournment. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Penny? Second? Katrina? All those in favor? Thank you.
Great. Thanks.